Hello and welcome. In this video we're going to set up D with the GLFW and OpenGL. I have already created a simple project. It's empty for now. So let me show you my dub.json file. As you see, I haven't installed any libraries yet. It's a simple empty dub project. And if I do dub, it just outputs its default message. Alright, firstly let's install the necessary libraries. So I will do dub add bind bc glfw and bind bc OpenGL. Great, we've added those dependencies now. So here they are. Alright, let's now open the bind bc glfw GitHub page and take a look at the additional configurations. So we've added it as a dependency, then we will do this a bit later, but the first thing we need to do, the next thing, is adding the versions flag. So let's do dub.json, and here down below we need to specify which version of GLFW and which version of OpenGL we are going to use. So I will just copy this here. GLFW 3.3, and then let's take a look at the bind bc OpenGL GitHub page. So here's the dependency, and then we need to specify additional versions configuration, GL 4.1. And then we need to specify GL allow deprecated as well, to allow for deprecated GLFW functionality. So I will copy this as well, and I'm going to paste it here. Alright, that's it. We are done with the dub.json file. Let's try to compile and run it. It should be versions here. So not version, but versions. Let's compile and run it. It's gonna fetch all of the libraries, compile them, and then create an executable. Everything works. So now let's actually get into coding. Right now we have only the app.d file and it's empty. So it has the default code inserted here. I'm going to create a new file, source libloader.d, where we are going to add all of the code necessary to load the libraries. So we're going to load GLFW and OpenGL dynamically. That's what the bindbc package does already by default. So let's open the libloader file. Alright, let's take a look at the GitHub page again and read through the loading part. So it is the dynamic binding, and let's take a look what we need to do. So we need to load the GLFW, and then we need to check for the return value. And if we have any errors, we need to handle them accordingly. So, and we also need the GLFW DLL. So let's go to the GLFW GitHub page and download the GLFW DLL. So I'm going to download this one. Alright, unzip the file, and I'm going to use the MinGW version, and I will copy it to the libs folder. So I'm going to create a libs folder in my projects folder, and then I will copy it right into the libs folder like this. Let's close the tab and return to this page. So let's firstly import the bindbc.glfw and import bindbc OpenGL packages. And then let's create a function, bool load GLFW. So the first thing we need to do is to specify where to find the GLFW library. If you're on Windows, we are going to use the DLL we have just downloaded. And if you are on macOS or Linux, then you have to install the GLFW library via using your package manager. So version Windows. And then we need to tell the bindbc package where to find the GLFW DLL library. So we need to tell bindbc package where to find the GLFW library. Thus, we need to set the custom loader search path, and we will set it to the libs folder. That's it. If you're on Linux or macOS, it will figure it out automatically. So let's get back to the GLFW GitHub page and take a look at what we need to do next. So auto-ret equals load GLFW, and then we need to check if ret does not equal GLFW support. In this case, we need to handle the errors. So I'm going to do a switch statement, ret with GLFW support. It is an enum. And then let's check the case GLFW support no library. So no library. In case there is no library, we're going to output a message. Write line, no GLFW library found. Break. Case bad library. Please update your GLFW library. Break. And then the default case, write line, unknown error. And in this case, we return false. We should return false in every case. So GLFW return false. And otherwise we return true. So we have successfully loaded the GLFW library. Now let's create the same function for OpenGL. Load OpenGL. And it is the same thing actually for OpenGL. So let's get to the OpenGL GitHub page and scroll down here. Yeah, so it's the same thing. So ret load OpenGL. If ret does not equal OpenGL support, the required version. So let's do it differently. Let's do a switch case. and switch ret with GL support. And it's pretty much the same, so let me copy this here. All right. Oh, we need to modify this here. So change it with OpenGL. Replace it with OpenGL. All right. So we're done. What we do here is we'll load the OpenGL library and then we'll load the GLFW library as well. And in order to load the GLFW library, we need to specify where to find the GLFW library in case you're using Windows. If you're using Linux or macOS, it will figure out on its own. So let's save the file and let's run dub. Set custom loader search path. So it's not found because we need to import the bindbc loader package as well. Now it should be fine. Cannot return from non-void function. Not loader 37. Oh, it should be bool here. Bool. Boolean. Compile it again. Line 46. So 46 statement not reachable. All right, so let's delete this part. We don't need it since we check for no library and bad library. Otherwise, it should load the OpenGL library successfully. And let's return from Vim and compile it once again. Okay, it needs a default. Okay, so here's default. Return true. Compile it. It compiles fine. So the next step is to actually load the library and initialize GLFW and OpenGL. So let's go to the source app-d. Let's import our libloader module, import bindbc GLFW, and import bindbc OpenGL. Now we can start writing the code. So let me at first create a few constants for our window. Now let's try to load the GLFW library. So if not load GLFW, then we are going to output the message failed to load GLFW, and we are going to return. Once we have loaded the library, we can initialize it. So if not GLFW init, I'm going to output that initialization. Had failed. Failed to initialize GLFW. And then we're going to return again. At this point, we can use the GLFW functionality as we would usually do in any other project. So let's set GLFW hints, GLFW window hint, And then we need to hint the context version we're using. So GLFW context version major. And we have specified the 3.3 and the GLFW context version minor. In case you're using OS X, then we need to specify another hint. GLFW window hint, GLFW OpenGL forward compat. And then the last hint we need to specify, window hint, is GLFW OpenGL profile, GLFW OpenGL core profile. Now we can create our window. So I'm going to do auto window, GLFW create window, and then we need to specify the parameters. So no, and if window is null, I'm going to output a message, failed to create GLFW window. And then let's do return. Oh, and I forgot to do one thing. So once we have initialized the GLFW window, once we exit the scope, so scope exit, we need to GLFW terminate the session. And we need to do the same thing for our window. So if the window was initialized successfully, we need to scope exit GLFW destroy window, and it should destroy our window, releasing the resources. Now we can start working with OpenGL. So what we need to do is to create our context. So GLFW make context current, and we need to specify the window. Now we can actually load the OpenGL library. So if not load OpenGL, so if it wasn't successful, we are going to output a message, failed to load OpenGL, and return. And the final touches we need to do is to set the viewport. It needs to know our window size with height. Then we need to configure input mode, set input mode, window, GLFW sticky keys, and true. And the last thing is GLFW swap interval, and set it to 1. Great, so now we can work on our game loop. So while not GLFW window should close, we are going to process the events, update the game logic, and render everything to the screen. So let's do the first thing is process the events. So GLFW poll events. If GLFW get key, GLFW key Q is pressed, GLFW press, GLFW press, then we want to quit the game. So break. That's it. I will leave update empty for now, and let's work on our rendering to the screen. So we need to clear our buffer, so GL clear color, and I'm going to use 0.5 0.5 and 0. Then we need to call GL clear. It takes in a flag, GL color buffer bit, and GL depth buffer bit. Great, so here we can draw, and we need to GLFW swap the buffers window. All right, so we are done. This is our GLFW project template, and it should work. Let's try to compile it and run it. Something has failed. So what we need to do, GLFW window should close, and it takes in our window as an argument, since it should know what window we actually want to close. Let's compile it again. And there is GLFW swap buffer, swap buffers. Okay, so the function is called GLFW swap buffers, not buffer. All right, and here's our window. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. I will try to reply as quickly as possible. And have a nice day. See you next time.